Welcome, everyone, to the Wine Access Author Series. I'm so excited to be here today with husband and wife, Dorothy Gaiter and John Brecher, equally renowned individually for their amazing knowledge of wine, their ability to communicate that passion to consumers and the trade alike, and also just an amazing partnership in life as well. They are the founders of Open That Bottle Night and collaborators on the Grape Collective. They met first at the Miami Herald and then went on to rise to prominence as the co-authors of the Wall Street Journal's Tastings column. But perhaps their most celebrated work is the book Love by the Glass, Tasting Notes from a Marriage. First published in 2003, the book has become a celebrated memoir, gracing the shelves of wine enthusiasts everywhere. It's a great honor to welcome today, Dottie and John. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Wine Access Author Series. I'm Vanessa Conlin, Head of Wine for Wine Access, and I'm here with Dottie and John. Very excited to have a conversation today. I guess what I wanted to ask you is, it seems to me like for many people, there's a sort of high barrier of entry to wine, or a lot of things seem intimidating. So I'm curious if you have advice for someone who would like to learn more about wine or who is curious but not quite sure how to get started. What do you think the best way to start learning is?
Pulling cork.
Yes.
I think that there's just no substitute for tasting as many different wines as you can. Every chance you get, something different, and to take notes that mean something to you, not that they need to make sense to anyone else, but it's good to have a record of what you've tasted.
When we were very young, we started drinking wine together in 1973, believe it or not. We found a great merchant in Miami where we lived at the time. We'd give her a budget of $72 per case, average of $6 a bottle, which meant that we could go crazy with one or two bottles, like $9 or $10. and others would be 3 or 4. And every time we went, she would then find us a case of different wines from all over the world. And then we'd come home, we'd look at Hugh Johnson, we'd look at Leon Adams and say, oh, wow, this is so cool. This is from here, this is from there. And that's how we started to learn. We didn't know anything about wine. We hadn't grown up with wine, and we really didn't have any money. We were working journalists, but none of that is a barrier to entry if you're curious.
Similarly, I did not come from wine, and I also had a merchant that I trusted who would put together cases for me, and I was just barely out of your budget. It was a $10 per bottle limit.
Whoa!
I know.
Oh, wow.
Big time, but
Life.
I think it's really important. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but to taste all different price points. I think often also, in the wine business, or people looking in think, oh, we just drink fancy wines all the time, or something has to be expensive to be good. But I find that that's not the case at all. So I think actually maybe going in and buying a bunch of bottles with a $10 limit is good for people to do every once in a while.
Oh, definitely. We drank bull's blood. We both of her from Hungary. We tasted so many different things.
And even today, the thing is, what we always said is that there's a real difference between price and value. We've tasted some inexpensive wines that are terrific values because they're delicious. We've tasted some very expensive wines that are terrible values because they're not that delicious. Price alone doesn't tell you anything. You really have to taste it for yourself, and you have to trust your own judgment. Don't let anyone else tell you what's good and what's not.
Not even us. We would tell our readers, you might be simpatico with our taste, but we can't tell you what it tastes like in your mouth, and you should trust that.
I love that you said that. It's something we talk a lot about at Wine Access. And I think one of the questions I get most often from consumers is, well, I know what I like, but how do I know if it's actually good? So I'm curious if you're asked that question as well, and what your answer is.
Our answer is, did you enjoy it? If you thought it was good, then it's good. Own it.
Right.
Don't let anyone intimidate you into thinking that there's something wrong with your appreciation of wine. And that's a self-inflicted injury that the industry did to itself. two selves there.
Yeah.
That the telling people that you have to be educated about wine before you can enjoy it.
Mhm.
Well, no, you don't. I love that painting behind your head. That's Van Gogh.
It is Van Gogh.
Okay, so I knew that, but you don't have to know to look at that and say that's really beautiful.
And it's the same thing with wine. Our hope is that people will enjoy wine enough to want to learn a little bit more about it. And then once they learn a little bit more about it, they'll enjoy it more, and then they'll want to learn more about it. And it's a virtuous cycle. That's our hope. But you don't have to. You don't have to. Just enjoy wine. But if you'd like to enjoy it on a deeper level, remember that inside every bottle, every good bottle, is more than just liquid. There's history, there's geography, there's sociology, and there's someone's passion.
That's one of the things that that actually drew me to going into the wine business in the first place, was exactly what you said, John, which is it's not just a glass of something. It's a peek into a culture and their traditions and what they eat and the weather and the soil and all those things. So it really can sort of unlock the world just by, like you said, Dottie, just popping a cork, right?
Right. And when we wrote the Wall Street Journal's column, we'd never called it a wine column, because we thought that a column about just wine would have a much more limited readership than a column about life. So we brought in our kids, we brought in our life, we put it, in front of readers every week for almost 12 years.
And they felt they knew us. They felt like they were going on a journey with us, because we always told people that that's really what wine is. It's a journey. And the great thing about wine is that you never get to the end of that journey, because there's always something new. That's what's so much fun about it. That's why we wrote our book, Love by the Glass, for that very reason, because it's our biography, our autobiography of our journey of life as told through our journey of wine.
Is there a region or a certain winemaker or a trend, anything that's really capturing your interest these days that you'd like to know more about?
Everything. Just show me something that I don't know, that I haven't seen, that I haven't tasted, and I'm on it. I'm totally open to tasting whatever. And what's happening in this country is pretty exciting. There's wine made in every state now, commercially, and it's we just had some wines from Virginia, and we had discovered Dennis Horton's wines, wow, maybe 30 years ago.
Right.
And his wife and daughter are still at it and doing really interesting stuff. So we always tell people, check out what's happening in your backyard. That your local winery would love to see you, especially now.
Right. And think about, just a very short time ago, we couldn't have said this, but there's wine now being made well all over the country. There's burgeoning wine industries in Texas, in Michigan, not to mention Oregon and Washington, Virginia. Any time we talk about this, we hear from people in the other 45 states saying, why didn't you mention us? And that's fabulous. That's wonderful. That's exactly what we want. We want people to say, wait a minute, you didn't mention North Carolina. That's exactly what we want, because we want people to be excited about their local winemakers who need their support right now.
Absolutely. And well said. So I wanted to kind of go back in history a little bit, if you wouldn't mind sort of filling in a little bit of your background. So I think, if I'm correct, you met at the Miami Herald?
June 4th, 1973 at 9 a.m.
But I think you were not writing about wine at that point. Is that correct? So how did that transition happen?
We had been very serious journalists our whole lives. We both decided very early in our lives that we wanted to become journalists. We graduated from college on the same day and both started at the Miami Herald when we were 21 years old, June 4th, 1973, the day we met.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. And, at that point, the wines we'd had were like Matou's and
Boone's Farm. That's
Boone's Farm,
yeah.
the classics.
The classics.
But we were working hard at the Miami Herald, and one day I saw a wine store, and I went in and I got a bottle of wine, and there was just something about it that made us relax and talk about our day in a way that we hadn't before. And we thought, this is good stuff. You know, we just were really drawn to wine. It made us slow down and connect with each other every night in a very special way. But we had never written about wine, even though it was our passion, until 1998. During all those years, we were very serious journalists. Dottie was a prize-winning writer about race in America, which is her true specialty. But in 1998, the Wall Street Journal started Weekend Journal. The editor, who we knew, said, you know, if this ever gets off the ground, would you write a weekly wine column for us? And because she was a friend, we said, oh, yes, sure, in addition to our jobs. And how much time could it take?
And it ate up our lives. Basically, we had very young children then. They were 8 and
9, maybe.
8 and 9, and bright, precocious, you know, wonderful. But the Wall Street Journal had always talked about starting a weekend edition. So we never thought it would happen. So that was an easy yes. Sure, we'll do it. And then it happened. So then we had to do it. And everyone at the newspaper, by that time, we'd gone from the Miami Herald to Newsweek and be at the New York Times and then to the Wall Street Journal. All of our colleagues knew that we were into wine, and many had had wine at our home, including this new editor for the Weekend Journal. And so she said, well, let's see how it goes. What we'd like for you to do is to tell readers what they should get on their way home on Friday. That Monday through Thursday, the Wall Street Journal will teach you how to make money, and on Friday, we'll tell you how to spend it. And so your column would do that. And we started out thinking, well, maybe this will catch on. About a month into it, Martha Stewart, to her credit, discovered us and said, you've got to come on my show. We got permission from the Wall Street Journal to do that. And then within 6 months, we had a book contract. It just went crazy. And then we discovered that Bill Plant at CBS News, the White House correspondent, was a big wine guy, and that the press corps in Washington always wanted to be on the plane with him when they traveled around. And even Reagan would ask him advice about wine. So we met Bill Plant, we had him on, and then he had us on CBS Sunday Morning, and this thing just blossomed. And I guess in our first year of writing the column, the newspaper nominated it for a Pulitzer Prize. It was just an incredible thing. And then about 2000, we were fried. I was writing about race. John was page 1 editor, shepherding a record number of Pulitzer Prize winning pieces, and doing the wine column, and fielding letters from readers. We heard from people in California who said, we only want to read about California wine, so could you stop the French stuff? We can't find the French stuff. And we would write back, well, then you need a new wine store, you know? But we had a great relationship with readers, and that's.
But with all that going on, the problem is that in 2000 we were so fried that we went to our boss, the great Paul Steiger, managing editor of the Wall Street Journal, and we said, Paul, we're still doing our real jobs, page 1 editor, urban affairs editor, and we're writing this column that is completely blown up, and we can't do both anymore. We just can't. Paul said, which would you rather do?
That took a second.
Yeah, and that's when we became full-time wine writers. It was completely by accident.
Well, I think you made the right choice.
That's good to hear.
I think, was it also in 2000 that you started the Open That Bottle Night?
1999.
1999.
Yeah.
Right. What happened was that when we started our column, the letter that we got most often, and we got it all the time, was from people who said, I have this one bottle of wine. It's from my late father's stash. It's from my wedding. It's from an auction. I've had it forever. I can't stand to open it. Can you tell me when I should open it? And by the way, how much is it worth? And and yeah, this 30-year-old bottle of Matus is going to pay for your retirement. But anyway, we got, and the truth is that every wine writer will tell you that that's the letter they get most often, is from people who have that one bottle. We got it so many times, we decided, okay, everybody clearly has that one bottle of wine. So we decided what we would do is establish a date where all of us together would just open that bottle. And we called it Open That Bottle Night.
And it became a worldwide sensation. This past February, it was celebrated in Prague. I mean, it's amazing the people we hear from who are doing it. IKEA actually had a promotion for Open That Bottle Night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really something. It's really wonderful. But the truth is that whether you've got 1,000 bottles in your collection or you've got one, we all have those bottles that are just too special to open. We're always going to open them on a special occasion. But then the longer we keep them, the occasion can never be special enough. And before you know it, things have passed you by. So you got to open it up.
Open up. And because no one's promised that tomorrow, Open That Bottle Night should be celebrated as often as possible.
Right. And
a lot of people are drinking their cellars now.
I started doing that. I don't have a deep cellar by any means, but I did have bottles that I was, for the same reason, well, I don't know, it's not ready, I should hold it. I mean,
yeah.
Can't take it with you.
Right.
Exactly right. We've heard from so many people over the past few months who are doing that, because this really has brought home what Dottie said, that there's no guarantee of tomorrow. Drink those wines and enjoy them, because in most cases, we're going to enjoy those wines more than our children.
Right.
Were there any bottles that stick out in your memory that you opened that were particularly significant to you?
My gosh, an Open That Bottle Night.
Well, I mean, this past Open That Bottle Night
was fabulous. We were in Napa because the University of California at Davis had asked us to donate our papers to its wine library, to its Warren Winiarski wine writers collection. And Jancis Robinson's papers are there, and Hugh Johnson's. They wanted ours. I thought, oh my gosh, this is huge. So they had this big bash at Copia, and it fell on the last Saturday in February, which is when Open That Bottle Night happens. And we had a bash after we spoke. Karen McNeil interviewed us before people, and then we went to this dining room and had this amazing Open That Bottle Night celebration. Carlton McCoy from Heights brought a 68 BV George Latour Private Reserve Cabernet that we had on our honeymoon, and he knew that, and he brought it and poured it, as only a master sommelier can do. It was just, it was delicious just watching him pour it.
That's true.
And it had stood up so well. It was lovely. Rolando and Lorena Herrera from Misueno brought a bottle of the first Chardonnay that they made. I mean, there are all of these weep-worthy wines.
Weep-worthy, yeah.
Yeah, it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful wines. And that was an Open That Bottle Night for the ages.
Yeah, it really was. And right now, I just got up because I wanted to just show this. This is a Navarro Gewürztraminer. This is one of our favorite wines in the world. We just have always loved Navarro Gewürz, and it's so special to us just because we love how it tastes. It's just such a tremendously special wine, and it has been for so many years. But it's very, very hard to get. It's very, very hard to find. So whenever we can find it, we tend to hoard it. Especially because, as you know, dry Gewürz, when well made, can age just spectacularly well. Well, because we're kind of in an open that bottle night era right now, in these months, we actually have opened up a couple of these, and they're really good.
They are. They're delicious.
And this one, I'm showing it to you now because it's not going to be here for long.
Now you're making me thirsty.
Well, look what's behind you.
That's right. I guess I don't have far to go if I really need to solve that problem. I understand when you were at the Wall Street Journal, rather than having a numerical point scale, you had certain terms that you used to judge wines, like ranging from yuck to delicious. So how did you come up with your terminology, and what would fall in those different categories when you would taste them?
Well, those categories were the ones that we had when we drank as civilians in our home for all those years before we ever wrote about wine. So we thought, why not? They served us well for all those years. Why not continue to use them? Yuck, it's just a wine with no soul. And then you had these, good, then you had very good, then you had very good, delicious, and all the way up to delicious exclamation point. And so few of those wines that we would taste every year fell into that category. One year we had only two among, how many wines do you think we drank a year? Thousands. And
not drank,
tasted. Right. At the end of every night of brown bag tastings, John would pour everything down the sink, and I would have to leave the kitchen. I couldn't watch that. But one year, only two wines made our top category. I think one was $12 and one was $300. They were just beautifully made wines. You could taste the winemaker's soul. There was a vision. You could taste the place. It just puts you right there in the vineyard. And very few wines can hit that. A lot, some come close, but very, very few can ring all of our bells that way.
Right. That's one reason why it's such a good idea to keep notes, as Dottie said earlier. And don't feel like when you do keep notes, it has to be hints of brambles and stuff like that. All it has to be when you start is kind of like, this is really good, went great with chicken. I mean, that's all you need. I mean, that's how we started. And then we realized that we kind of wanted a shorthand in addition to our little description. And that's when we started our rating system, which went yuck to delicious with an exclamation point. But keeping those notes turned out to be really important because it allowed us to go back and say, this is a type of wine we really like. And kind of to circle in on kind of like, what is it that we generally are attracted to and generally not attracted to? Think how many times people have walked into a wine store and said, I had this really good wine. I don't know what it was, but it had a yellow label. Don't do that.
Don't do that. We actually have methods that for label removing, that just fall short of doing a rain dance, Please come off. But we would boil them. Some we would put in the oven because at different decades in different parts of the country, they use different types of glue. So we found that some labels from this country came off better if you put an empty bottle in an oven, and some would boil off. Yeah.
And now, of course, people just take a
photo.
But
where's the fun in that?
But there is something special about actually having the label that's nice. Yeah. It's really nice. It's such a very personal memory that came from a bottle that you cared about deeply.
I remember the first time you brought home a German Riesling. We'd never had a Riesling from Germany before, and it was just astounding.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, something can taste this wonderful. It was an eye-opening
Yeah.
Heart-opening experience.
It really was. It was like 1976. And I walked into a wine store in North Palm Beach when I was Palm Beach bureau chief of the Miami Herald. And Art said, "So do you like German Riesling?" And I said, "No." Because that's, I mean, doesn't everybody say that? You know, I mean, it's just such a shame because Riesling is so underappreciated. But he said, "Do you like German Riesling?" I said, "No." He said, "Trust me, just try this."
Obsessed.
The
lilac label.
Changed it? No.
No, it wasn't the lilac label?
No, but it really changed our life.
I understand your daughter just celebrated a 1-year wedding anniversary. So I'm curious, at her wedding, did you select the wines? And if so, what were they?
Well, when she was born, we laid down 89 Decem. And, you know, that's such a beautiful wine to just watch age. Mm-hmm. So we had, we had a case of those, and we decided to open 3 or 4 at a rehearsal dinner. And we told the story of Decem to her friends. There were about 30 of them, about, you know, Thomas Jefferson and the whole history, you know, very briefly. And we also served an August Kessler Riesling, because when she and her sister were younger, we dragged them to Germany because we wanted to taste Spätburgunder. And we knocked on Kessler's door, and he looked down and said, "I don't have any wine to sell. It's all gone, but I have some here. Would you like to come up and taste it?" And so I think he opened juice for the girls while we tasted his Spätburgunder. And so we kept in touch with him. We contacted the winemakers whose wines we wanted to serve at the rehearsal dinner to ask also if they had any advice for the newlyweds, the soon-to-be weds. And everyone gave us some advice. Our daughter craves about Malbec, so we had some Katina. And Laura Katina actually wrote a haiku for them. That woman is...
She's awesome.
She is so awesome. She's just awesome.
The idea was that every bottle that we served would have a story. And so that their marriage could start its own journey at the same time continuing a journey that had been taking place during their whole lives.
So I have a question. You can, whether you have the same answer or you want to answer separately, but I like to ask people, is there one person that you would love to have a glass of wine with, dead or alive? You can be a time traveler, that you've never met.
Gosh, one person.
Well, I guess we're very sorry that we never met Robert Mondavi.
That's exactly who I was thinking of.
Yeah. And you know, we could have, we should have, we just didn't. We met Andrei Chelychev, thank God, you know, I mean, how incredible. We've actually gotten to know Warren Winiarski fairly well. I mean, you know, these are legends. Met Mike Gergich, but we never met Robert Mondavi. And he's just such a very, very, very special part of wine, not just American wine, but wine. And obviously a brilliant, brilliant man. And yeah, I'd love to meet Robert Mondavi.
Yeah, he's the reason why we fell in love with Napa. We tasted his 74 cabs. Mm-hmm. And for decades, we had one every year on our anniversary. So in 75, we dragged a suitcase full of champagne onto an Amtrak train from Miami to California. We rented a car in San Francisco, drove straight to the Mondavi winery where John picked a grape near the arch. And we just never got to meet him. And there was one time when he was in New York, right across the park, he was visiting his daughter, and we just couldn't make it. And I regret that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live in Napa Valley, and yeah, I would have loved to have met him as well. We owe him so much here. You know, I think not just Napa, but sort of the whole American wine industry, right? In terms of elevating each other, supporting each other, sharing information. Yeah,
Right.
Right.
this has been lovely to reconnect, even though it's just virtual. I hope we'll be able to share a glass of wine again someday in person. But in the meantime, at least I got to reconnect here. So thank you, and we're so excited to have you. You're the first. You're kicking off our author series. So
Oh,
yeah.
Here it is. Love it.
I really think I want those two to adopt me. I just adore them. They're so humble. They're so fun. I love that they literally remember the exact day and time that they met. It's truly an inspiring story, both in life and professionally. I also really love that they encourage people to open bottles, not just to learn, but to open bottles and make that evening the occasion rather than waiting for the right occasion to open a bottle. So what a treat. And I'm so excited that Dottie and John kicked off this author series.